Hi. I just want to take a minute and welcome everyone. My name is Caroline Payson. I'm the Director of Education here at Cooper Hewitt, and I'm delighted to welcome you here for this evening's event, which is the third in our DISEñO series, which is a partnership between the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum and El Museo de Barrio. The program is sponsored with federal support by the Latino Initiatives Pool of the Smithsonian, which is part of the Smithsonian Latino Center. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to collaborate with a wonderful museum up the street and to come up with a series that really explores the issues of design and Latino identity, not just through wonderful events like tonight's panel, but also we've had the opportunity connected to each of these to have some hands-on design programs. So for those of you who are working in the field or just starting out in the field or thinking about starting out in the field, it gives you the opportunity not just to hear from these speakers one night, but to have the opportunities, for example, tomorrow night, for people to work with Rebecca on your own design work. So we've really been privileged to have that opportunity of combining not only the intellectual and the discussion-based work, but some hands-on things as well. So we may have a few spots left tomorrow night. If for those of you who are so jazzed about tonight's presentation that you decide you want to come back tomorrow night and make something. I also just wanted to do a quick show of hands to see how many of you have been to Cooper Hewitt recently. So for how many of you are we new? Excellent. We're delighted to welcome you here. We've opened after, as many of you know, after 3.5-year renovation. And so please come back and have the opportunity to look at the exhibitions and see when I talk about the new museum, we've got some incredible technology, we have an immersion room, some wonderful digital tables that let you connect to the museum. We've also really sort of looked at the lens through which we looked at this new experience was as play designer. We want people to come here and own it and to be part of that design experience. So I invite all of you to come back and do that. And obviously, of course, to come to many, many more programs. So I'm checking off. I've welcomed you all. I've thanked the funder. Now it's my opportunity to welcome our speakers. Tonight, as I mentioned, is the third in our series that's focusing on different aspects of design. The first one was on fashion. Then we had one that was looking at comic books and graphic design on that level. And tonight we're able to turn our attention to graphic design. I should also say, which is something very exciting to us, that we already know that we've been renewed by the Latino Center for next year. So we will have this opportunity to continue our collaboration. And at this point, I think we'll cover all the design fields, Stephanie. And not only will we have them in terms of public programs, but everything we do tonight is being live streamed and everything is being recorded. So we'll have a wonderful library of every one of these programs for students and other interested designers to have for years to come. So we're really excited about that. So tonight's communication designers include Armin of UnderConsideration, Gabriela Mirensky, who's a faculty member at SVA in New York, and UDEM in Monterrey, Mexico, Rafael of Alfalfa Studio, and our moderator is Rebecca Méndez, who is a professor at UCLA Design Media Arts, and is also the winner of the National Design Award for Communication Design. So Rebecca is going to start and be our moderator tonight, and I invite you all to enjoy the speakers and to think of some great questions to ask them at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everyone, for coming here, and thank you to the museum, the Cooper, and the Museo del Barrio. So thank you for inviting us to this. I will start just by, I think that one of the things I wanted to share with you is that it is very difficult to encompass everything in about 15 minutes because I practice in very different areas, from being an artist, creative director, designer, and professor at UCLA in the Design and Media Arts department. And I just recently became also the founder of the UCLA Art, Design, and Environment Center, of which I will talk about at the end of the talk. Together with my husband, Adam Ewens, we have Rebecca Méndez Studio, which is in the Westwood Village, the North Westwood Village in Los Angeles. And there is a Yucatecan hammock there to just remind me to be able to open the space for contemplation, for daydreaming, imagining. So even sometimes, I mean, I don't think I have actually even taken a nap on that one for a long time, but the image of it just opened my mind to the possibilities. So I want to start with an autobiographical note, as these early experiences in my life, they continue to influence how I do my work and how I work. I was born in Mexico City and raised in Mexico City as well, and for extended periods, we would travel into the jungles of Mexico. My father's passion was archaeology, Mesoamerican archaeology, and so sometimes we would camp for a long time, a month or 2 months, within the ruins. Now, they would not let you do that, but they would let us do that a long time ago. And so I would see these Mayan temples. This is Uxmal, and it is a drawing by Frederick Catherwood, who in 1839 traveled to Mesoamerica with writer John Stevens. And, oh my God, espérame, no, these went somewhere in the wrong place. Hold on, I'm trying to just see my notes. And so what was interesting to me is that I got to enter this, understand the symbols and signs, and here it is, you know, another image that we would spend a lot of the times drawing them and making carvings, drawings from carvings. And so that was my beginning, and I think that my love for symbolism and typography started there, as well as my father shared with me that Catherwood, what he would do is that he would use a camera lucida to be able to make these drawings. So he introduced me to photography. We would spend time explaining those details, and he loved technology, so also cameras was at hand. So for many years later on, I went to Piedras Negras. This is Yoquib in Maya, in Guatemala. And if you see here, we can see Chac, the mouth of the entrance of the building, overrun by this jungle. And this idea of not only the symbolism, but the power and the life around you. Everything around you is vital. So there was a sense of this idea of the vital matter that became very important. Another important influence was that my parents both are chemical engineers, so they instilled in me also the love for matter. Everything, no matter what mundane my questions were, always the tome of organic chemistry and the tome of inorganic chemistry would be brought to the table. And I would just sit lecture after lecture on this. I think maybe that's why I also became a professor. But one of the things that I understood now, maybe not when I was that young, is that they instilled in me the love of the nature of matter, its composition, organization, behavior, cycles, and systems, and specifically the forces that, the cross-rhythmic forces that make phenomena emerge. Less about, let's say, if there's a mountain, much more about what collided to make that happen. So I created works. This is a photograph I filmed with 16 millimeter. I'll show you an art project first. This is, at any given moment, grass. I shoot with 16 millimeter film. Then I projected in a very large space to be able to make as a window or something that appears to break the architectural space. And as a child, I was very contemplative, and I would spend a lot of time asking questions, for example, of like, why do living things and physical phenomena take the form that they do? And how is that things work, the mechanisms of nature? This series has about 7 works in it, and it's a focus on organization and the logic of the work itself, like maybe one blade of grass through organization and through the way the wind hits it and the light. It's the complexity in the world in a way. And I'll move to the next one because this lasts a little bit. Don't crash. Don't crash. There. And so here is shown an architectural space, and it adapts to the space. I like to adapt to the site. So maybe this first work focuses on that idea of the physico-chemical point of view of the interest in matter. Is a cover for the book of a monograph for the Elena Newton Harrison. they were making artwork in the 60s at the same time that Walter de Maria, Robert Smith, and Nancy Holt, friends of the Harrisons. And they themselves were doing land art, whereas the Harrisons decided to do eco art. They defined that term of eco artist in where they were actually respecting the agency of nature and doing environmental reclamation projects of art. So this is something where I am looking at how is it that with a book I can bring the processes of nature into the work. For example, here, like burning the text and allowing the smoke of the burn to impregnate into the cover, or cutting the edges, like grinding them rather than actually clean cut, so that there is a sense of the material itself. And this is a book that you saw in the promotion, but it is a book for MoCA. It's called Suprasensorial Experiments in Light and Color and Space. It was an exhibition at MoCA. And the idea was that the reader would be actively engaged with the book itself, because it was all about participation in the exhibition. So one of the things that I did was that I created the type to be the red and the green on top of each other. It's bilingual. And by using the gels with the chroma of the same exact color of the type, you would actually absorb its color and reveal the opposite color. And so you needed to interact to be able to go through the book. And that was based not necessarily on my whim necessarily, but it was based on Carlos Cruz Diez, who said that he loved the Polaroid technology, that how you had the red, orange, and the green, and that through working with those two colors, you can have the entire spectrum. He, in a sense, through his artwork, said that he emancipated color from form, allowing the yellow to come in the shadow of those. Emerging those ideas that emerge from the artwork itself is how a lot I approach the work. I've done some identities. This is for the Aalto Digital Design Lab in Finland, and one of the things when I arrived to the project, they were calling themselves the ADD, which was not a good idea. so how I couldn't change their name, but I had to be able to find a way of being able to think creatively about how to add something. So adding value of design was the way that I began to work with it. So these posters even began to be printed in that same manner. First, the one with fluorescent and metallic, so there would be an instability of the material. Then that went into the City of Wild postings, and then a week later, it was the blue that said at culture, then the black that said at code, and then the last one that said at variance. So it was also in the way of an engine, not only through the words, but through how we thought about it in terms of production. This is some of the rest of the work with the whole website for them. And then again, it's like some of the brands have been very, very large. And this one was when I was creative director and head of brand integration group at Ogilvy and Mather, Los Angeles. We were tasked to create the new campaign, the new brand image for Motorola. Huge team, beautiful work, loving in great scale, but also I love doing very small works, like this is a firm, an architectural firm in Los Angeles, Constandard. Based on the golden section, very, very refined, simple architecture that they do. And so the logotype takes the form of, again, evolving from the golden section. For the Architecture and Design Museum, also another identity. And then after working at Ogilvy for many, many years, I decided that all of my might, all the knowledge I had, I wanted to be able to use it for a social cause. I believe in design as a social force. So this one, I donated my studio's time for 4 years to develop an identity for the Los Angeles Commission on Assaults Against Women. And so what we did was develop, and I say it's basically Adam, myself, and a lot of the times my students. My students were involved in this. And we gave them the engine about the idea of over violence, that's really what we wanted to be, over violence, and have the community activated. So it was Rebeca over violence, the museum, the Cooper over violence, peace over violence. And it was interesting at that time because peace, when we proposed peace, we had a board that had grown up in the 60s, and it was amazing how jaded they were about the idea of peace. So they were very quickly to say no. But in the other hand, it's like, who else is better suited to actually bring peace back into the world? So,
It's a prevention. I mean, you go and you tell one kid what's right and what's wrong, and their friends come to them and ask, well, my boyfriend's hitting me, I'm not sure if this is right or not, and they will give the right advice. It's lighting a fire and just spreading the knowledge.
essays. And then one important project that Tom Main asked me to do was to create an archigraphic mural that was about 30,000 square feet. I had never done something so big. I had no idea what that meant, even in my computer. I tried opening a file, just about a section of it, and I crashed, because I was still having like a Quadra 9600, super, like tripped, but it was useless. So I had to rent computers to begin to do that, and it was an identity that was formed around the idea of dissolution. It was cuisine, it was for the Tsunami Asian Grill for the Venetian Casino. So I did an underwater film shoot and arrived at this image. I had to create this, to work a mural on envelopes that were so complex and so crazy. This was a project that was exhibited at the triennial here in 2000, the first triennial. And it was just wonderful to extend my love for photography and my interest in space, in moving into greater spatial opportunities, and then working with Tom to clad all of these envelopes into a mural, an archigraphic mural. Interesting now is that later on I was asked again by Tom, but now under the kind of the idea of public art. So it was here where, even though I had a master's in fine art, I had not practiced as a fine artist until this moment. It was these projects that kind of like pulled back all of my love for fine art, and then it just kind of opened a possibility for me to then begin to practice as well as an artist. And it was interesting because I needed to kind of remember myself more than anything, recreate myself as an artist too. Very different way in terms of how the processes might be the same, but how you initiate a project, it was to me then a very different process. These were other projects for the University of Cincinnati. I'm going to just glide through those, but it was one of those times where we wanted to cover everything with the canvas the same way that we did with the previous one. Fire retardant canvas and all of that, and then no one would want to actually commit to wrapping the canvas around the very unusual folds that Christina Locke, architect of Tom Main, had done, of morphosis. And so they were about to kill the project, and I said, wait a minute, we come from a tradition of muralists from Mexico, so let's paint the thing. So I was not the painter, we had to work with painters, with artists, they were great, Susanna Dath and James Griffith. I bring this piece because I have a friend of mine, Brent Frost, whom I designed his LPs, records, everything, and he creates the sound for my video artworks. Sometimes those collaborations are beautifully rich, they're just very, very important to have, collaborate with others, especially in other fields. And these are the poster inside. And then the last project I want to talk about is the idea that in the end, as designers, we are storytellers. And I'm recovering, as an artist, I'm most interested in the idea of fieldwork. And I have a project that I'm interested in that it is on migration. Fieldwork is the idea that you use disciplines from geography to science fiction to design to art to be able to bring together a way of being able to create something that it is transdisciplinary, multimedial, but also Robert Smithson at one point said that whereas there are the scientists that work in the lab, there are the scientists that work, and the ones that work in the field, they get affected. It's more unstable. We get affected even by, let's say, the weather. And I'm definitely more interested in being as an artist, as a designer, out in the field where I am confronted with the forces of nature and the idea that I cannot control everything. So fine art work that I'm doing is based on the Arctic tern, a small seabird that, working with a scientist in Reykjavik, said that 90% of the chicks are dying. The waters are warming around. I'll show you their trajectory. He flies from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again every year. This is a trajectory. We have filmed in the north, and that's where in Iceland the waters are warming around Iceland for 1 degree. Enough that the mackerel is entering sooner to eat the sand eel, which is the only food that the cria, the Arctic tern, can feed the young. So they find them dead of hunger with tons of little fish that cannot access their beaks. So this is something that Anthropocene climate change, all of those, the ecology, geoaesthetics, they're starting to be so interesting to me, the post-human idea, in which we don't consider ourselves as the center of everything. So this project, the first phase was exhibited at GLOW. GLOW is an event in Los Angeles that it is a one-night event. I was commissioned to do a project there, and I decided to then do a 26-minute video that focused on the work that we had been doing on the nesting of this Arctic tern. I wanted to have a sense of this almost planet rising from against the sea that is rising from the sun, from the ocean. And it was projected, it was viewed by 130,000 people. It was a kind of one-day public art. So one of the things that I'll show you, I think, the little film. I think you'll get a sense of how we built it. I had to work with engineers. But this kind of works is an extension of the way in which, again, as designers, we're storytellers, but this actually pushes the storytelling into another arena. Is it filmmaking? Am I a documentarian? This is the part that right now I'm also in a very changing place, the way that I do the artworks. So the Arctic tern goes all the way to Antarctica and then back, changes the feathers, molds the feathers in Antarctica. And all the trajectory that you saw in that map is a trajectory that we want to do for the project itself. So that project, we are applying for the National Science Foundation to go to Antarctica to then document that site. But project, it'll take me maybe 5 years to 10 years to accomplish this. And while I do that, then I also have my design studio. I teach. I have now the center. A little bit of maybe too many things. But the center itself, I'm connecting with within UCLA, with the environmental humanities, with other different institutions, with the Nevada Museum of Art, who collects this work, with the Harrisons in Santa Cruz, a lot of groups that hopefully that is my way of bringing together a lot of my interests of not only now that can be exhibited in a gallery, but that actually, in a sense, it changes the way that we perceive and we maybe tell the story of the Anthropocene climate change. That's it. Thank you.
All right. I have no planets rising out of the ocean, so I apologize. Hola. Actually, that's typo should be hola. Come on. Rough audience, jeez. All right, so just as a quick introduction of why I may be here, representing graphic design and Latino communities. I'm originally from Mexico. I was born and raised there until 1999, and after I graduated college, I hauled ass to Mexico, to the US. So that's me, in case there was any question. That's my Twitter, Instagram, all kinds of social media accounts. Pornhub, no, not that one. Together with my wife, that's my wife. Just had a, like, who is that? Like, I know her. Yeah, so that's my wife. She's a Briny GP, and together we make UCLA. So that stands for UnderConsideration LLC. That's the firm that we have. Firm is a loose word that we use to call ourselves, and I'll explain. But we are UnderConsideration LLC. We live in Austin, Texas. And this picture kind of explains pretty much what Austin is or why I really enjoy living there. And it's kind of like this mesh of living in Texas, but at the same time, you're in one of the most progressive cities in the US, and it has cowboys riding bulls, and those car sharing program that's it's really big. So you have this really interesting dichotomy of technology and old school Texas cowboys who think that thing is the devil, and their bull can probably crush it with one hoof. So we have by now we have our own business. We run that business from home. We have little to no client work. So unlike most graphic design firms, we don't have clients. If we do, we might have one or two a year. So the question is, how the F did that happen? And it's basically, I've been 15 years a designer, sort of. When I started, as I mentioned, I left Mexico in 1999. I got a job straight out of school in Atlanta, Georgia. It was called March 1st. Giant internet consulting firm that, God knows what they did other than have big buildings and free soda machines and arcade games. Eventually they had some clients that they all went bankrupt, and we went bankrupt. And but I was there. It was at the right time, at the right place, because they were giving jobs to anyone that could at least open Photoshop, and I had that going for myself. And they would give, now getting a work visa is almost impossible. And at the time they were like, we'll wait. Process your visa. It's going to be 3 months. Just sit tight, and we'll get you over here when the time comes. So I'm extremely grateful to them, just because they allowed me to come to the U.S. They didn't allow me, but they enabled me to come to the U.S. After they went bankrupt, I went to work at a small design firm in Chicago called Armin Design, as opposed to the big giant thing where things seem to be happening, but nothing ever really happened. Here, it was all about, doing stationery and doing, I would spend days on a business card and getting the typography perfect and working with printers. So it was a much more hands-on experience, and getting to just like really obsess about design stuff, because we weren't that big, we weren't that busy. So, it had that opportunity to just like really delve into things. After that, I always wanted to come to New York, because I think most graphic designers have some kind of urge to make it here somehow, and I sort of did. Moved here in, I think it was 2004. I started working at Decor Design, and 6 months after I was there, Michael Berud at Pentagram, one of the partners, sent me an email saying, like, do you want to come work with me? And like, yeah, let me think about it. We're like, yes, I'm coming right over. So I was there from 2005 until 2000. I had my first kid while at Pentagram, and for some reason, I don't think they even know why, they give parents 3 months paternity leave at half pay. I was like, all right, I'll take that. So I took 3 months off. I was there with my newborn baby girl, and she pooped and cried, and she was wondering at the same time. And then I went back to work after 3 months, and all I could think about is, like, I want to be home with that pooping, crying thing. I can't be here at the office all day long. So I came into a situation where it wasn't responsible for me to be at Pentagram, wanting to leave as soon as it was 6 o'clock to go be with this child. So me and my wife decided to start our own business, and we became self-employed, and we started UnderConsideration full-time. So what is UnderConsideration? And we moved to Austin in 2009. So for the most part, I am a graphic designer, but now a big part of my identity is that I'm a blogger. I started one of the first, if not the first, design blog, and I don't say like, yeah, I did it. It was more like, no one else had done it, and I had the tools, I had the knowledge, because I had acquired the knowledge at March 1st, how to do websites. So I was able to start a blog called Speak Up, which was really popular in 2002, 2003. That's what it looked like at the time. And then it evolved into a few different iterations. Then eventually we closed it in 2009 because we had really heavy discussions about graphic design, about the AIGA, about things like the triennial. The Speak Up was actually included in the second triennial, I think, and it was a great honor. But eventually Twitter came on, Facebook came on, and no one had any energy to spend more time writing anything that was longer than 140 characters. So what made Speak Up, which was those really long discussions, it just went away. So Speak Up went. And then in 2006, I started another blog, which is what our most popular blog nowadays, called Brand New. And the premise is extremely simple. Unlike Speak Up, where it was more like, let's talk about design in general. This is just, we review identity redesigns or new designs for corporations, companies, services, products. And it's just, whether I give my opinion, and then people say, we like it, we don't like it, it sucks, it doesn't suck, I could have done it better, etc. And we get, it gets a lot of traffic. Those are different versions. And we get like 1.5 million page views a month. And again, it's not like me saying like, yeah, look at me. But it's a big thing for a blog just about logos. It's kind of like baffling. In 2009, I think, we started another blog, which is called For Print Only. And that's basically, we wanted an excuse to show really cool pictures of cool design stuff. So we started a blog that it would just highlight printed projects. So that's how it's evolved. That's what it looks like now. Quipsologist is a blog it's my excuse to spend time on the internet looking at stuff. And then it's basically a link blog. So we just collect cool things happening online. The last blog that we launched in 2011, I think, it's called Out of the Menu, and even more niche than Brand New. This is just about menus from restaurants. That's it. Like, we don't even care what your napkins look like. We just want to see what your menu looks like, and that's it. So it's really, and it's a much smaller traffic, much more traffic-wise, but it's a very specific thing that you can't really get anywhere else. I've been an author, for better or for worse. At some point, we wrote a book for How Books called Women of Design. Rebeca was in it. Soon after that, we wrote a 400-page graphic design history book. It was horrible pain in the ass, but it was very much worth it. But then we learned that all that hard work that we put into that book, most of the money goes to the publisher. So we became self-publishers because, why are we going to work so hard to let someone else make more money off of us? So we had one idea to do a book about how to make your portfolio, like your actual physical thing that you show up to an interview and say, please hire me. Isn't this pretty? So how do you do that? So this book is all up. It has a bunch of examples on how to do your portfolio. We're currently out of stock on the print version, where you can buy it as a PDF, and then we're working on the second version, the second edition right now. The thing with self-publishing is that, yeah, it's great, you're in control, you get to keep all the money, you get to decide what to do, but you also have to ship the damn thing. We did a pre-orders thinking that we'll get 20 pre-orders, 30 pre-orders. We got 400 pre-orders, and like, how do you deal with that? So we had no idea. We bought the worst envelopes in the world. All the stuff, we got a lot of them returned because they were getting mangled in the mail. That's my wife. This is literally a day before we had a scheduled C-section. We as if I'm gonna be there. Like, this is all on her. But we're there at the post office in Austin. They've never seen anyone come in with 400 of anything. So you can see them all like, really? Do we have to do this? So we've learned, we've improved. We have a better way of mailing stuff now. In the last 2 years, we did a little magazine called UC Quarterly, which was basically the best of every blog produced quarterly. And what we did was we took make-ready sheets from other printers that they didn't use, and then we stamped them with our logo, so that way we're recycling, and they look damn cool, because everything is like all these print runs, all these print tests that didn't really make it, and then we do the body is printed with a newspaper club in London that they just produce newspapers like crazy and really cheap. I recommend it. And we bind them with a thick rubber band. And then to print the cover, I mean, we do it in our living room. That's where our dining room table usually is, but it's not there right now because we have to let all this stuff dry. And we just print 500, we print 500 each quarter. So every quarter is like we do this every time, and obviously we have to ship them, watch a little TV while we're packing stuff. Also, I become an awards organizer where we have an open call, we get some judges, we ask people to submit their best work. In this case, for branding and identity work, we actually have judges come to Austin, all the work comes to Austin, we have them judge it, and then we produce books with the winners. We did it 4 years, and we just canceled it this year because the entry went down considerably, and it's just a lot of work. So we had to stop doing that. Then we did the same thing for FPO. So everything is kind of like stemming off of the blogs. So the people submit their best print projects. We have judges. They look at them really, really closely. We select the best, and we print a book. We also have them online. I'm also an event organizer. We've done the Brand New conference, which is, again, as the name implies, it comes from the blog Brand New, and it's a very niche thing. It's just the speakers are all going to be people doing identity, branding, or logo work, and the audience is mostly people in that field. So again, we kind of like to narrow things down so that we're not just doing a design conference. It's a very specific thing. We've done it 5 years now. The first one was in New York, which is here. This one was in San Francisco, and it's been a one-day event for the first 4 years. We've done it 3 times in New York, 1 time in San Francisco, and last year was the first time that we did it for 2 days in Chicago. So this is 2012, and we produce everything. We do all the identity, we do all the materials. This is 2013. There we are looking at this in Chicago. So Chicago was a little bit bigger. So we had some lettering on the stage. We manufactured tote bags in China. It was it's more of a big deal last year, and then we're going to continue doing it 2 years. So we'll see how it goes from there. Also, as an event organizer, in Austin, we do a thing called AI4GA. If you're familiar with AIGA, this might sound overly familiar, and it stands for the Austin Initiative for Graphic Awesomeness. Because ever since we've been in Austin, the AIGA chapter hasn't had any good speakers come to town, and that's been 5 years. So we thought, we're going to bring those awesome people that we want to hear, we're going to bring them to Austin, and we're going to organize the events. Our logo for the organization is a bat, because in Austin is full of bats. There's a bridge that has 1 million bats living underneath, so Austin is famous for bats, and it's merged with a unicorn, because unicorns are awesome. So far last year is the first year we did it. We had James Victori, Jessica Hish, David Carson, Matteo Bologna, Debbie Millman, Michael Beirut, and we go old school. Like, we actually design posters that people can take. You come, you take a 2-color silkscreen poster like they used to do in the old days. And we ask the speakers to design them. So, in between all of that, I remain a graphic designer because I'm doing everything. I'm doing the websites. When I say I mean we. Me and my wife, we do everything. I do most of the bulk of the work because she takes care of her kids in the afternoon, so she only works part-time. So I think in order to do graphic design, it's something that you have to do in a long period of time. You can't just do it in bursts of 2 hours, 4 hours. So I have the benefit of working on things for a longer period of time. So I end up doing a lot of the actual designing. So I am a graphic designer because we do, as I said, everything that we do has to be well designed to attract a design audience. But I'm still sort of a graphic designer because I do also the Excel spreadsheets, and I answer emails, and I take customer calls of, where's my PDF that I ordered? Like, did you get it in your email? Yeah, but I don't know where I put it. Like, I don't know, go back to like the womb and figure out how the internet works. So, I'm a graphic designer, sort of. Hola.
Hola, otra vez. Whoops. Okay. So I lived in Mexico, but I was not born in Mexico. I'm Argentinian, and at 16, I moved with my family to Mexico City via some other small town that I'd rather forget. And at this point, I decided that I am best at allowing designers to do the creative work and me doing what they generally find boring and difficult, and it's all of the management and the spreadsheets and the dealing with the staff and the dealing with the vendors. And so I call of that design management, and I've become a design management consultant. In addition to that, I've realized that I really like to teach, and that really fulfills me, and I feel also that that's a way that I can get back. So I'm both on the staff at SVA and at the UDEM, where I go 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes 4, to teach in person, and then the remainder of the time we do online sessions. That is my Twitter handle, which is mutuamente, which is a Spanish word that means mutually. And when I started the Twitter thing, I didn't realize that, nobody would know by mutuamente who that is, but little by little, they do. So if you want to shout out, there you go. So ever since the very beginning, when I was a kid, I was always very artistic, definitely. Very right-brained. I used to draw, paint. At school, I was always in all the contests. I also liked to do a lot with my hands. I did ceramics, I did metal smithing, I did painting. Everything that I could get my hands dirty and moving and touching was really what I enjoyed. And that was all fine until it came time to go to college. And, whoops. What is this? Help! Ayuda. When it came time to go to college, and in Latin America we pick the career that we want to do for the whole time, for before you get to college, all of a sudden my left brain started beep, beep, beep. Chemistry, do chemistry, you love chemistry. Both my parents are chemists too, so you really like that, you're good at that, come on. And I was like, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? I still like the arts very much. So, the solution for me at that time was to do graphic design. And graphic design seemed to put together the arts part, but also because you're dealing with a client and because you have to communicate a message that somebody else has to understand, not like a fine artist where if you get it, great, and if not, that's fine too. So, my left brain and my right brain were pretty happy at this point, and so was I. So, there we are, all a happy family. After I finished school, I went to work for 2 years in a silkscreen print shop. Which was also great because it still allowed me to get my hands dirty, but I was the only designer. It was a very small place. And I realized something else that has to do, I think, with the Latino identity and the way we do things in Latin America, which is the work system and the work environment was a little too chauvinistic for me. You know, being a recent grad, I could completely understand that I knew nothing and that I had a lot to learn. And that was great, but I would not accept that it was because I was a woman that this was happening. And it was hard to get heard, to get my point across. So I decided to come to the US, and I initially said, oh, I'll do a master's in design. And when I got to the university and started the first semester, I said, I miss doing things. I don't want to do things in the computer, which seemed to be in those days the direction that everything was going. So I decided to switch to fine arts. And within fine arts, I specialized in printmaking. Now, I had never done fine arts just for the sake of arts. I was always making something that would have some utilitarian, goal. So this to me was brand new. So I played a little. I did some photo etching, I did some monoprints, I did some drawing, and all of that because I met this man. I had the great fortune of having this artist whose name is Emanuel Araújo. He's a Brazilian artist that was visiting at City College that semester. Not only that, but he stayed for a whole year, so I could work with him for a whole year. And he's just fantastic as an artist, but also he's such a generous person, as you can see by that great smile. And Emmanuel created such an atmosphere where, we would be printing until 1, 2 in the morning without any idea what time it was. We hadn't eaten, we hadn't gone out. It was just being in this group, and I had never felt like that. And then he left, and I never felt like that again. And I really missed it. But then I said, if I can't create that, then maybe it's because I am not completely right-brained and I am not completely on the creative side. And I should make use of those two sides that I can use. So I decided to take a job at AIGA, where I could do all of the management of design, but I would always be working with design teams. And at AIGA, I must have worked with, 60, 80 different design teams doing all sorts of things. And that was the best part of my job, that I really got to work very, very closely with super talented, top-of-the-line designers, be really at the epicenter of everything that was happening in design. It's a nonprofit, so you always had to wear many hats. You were always after, what can we do to make this happen? But it was really worthwhile, and this is where it all happened. It's not where it's going to happen for a lot longer. They are moving in a couple of months, but that's another story for them. But that's the view of the gallery. Actually, when I started working at AIGA, that window didn't exist. So AIGA was the best kept secret in time. In New York, the window was maybe 2 by 2, 2 by 3, which is not the greatest thing for a gallery at street level on Fifth Avenue. It's really a missed opportunity. So finally, 2 or 3 years later, we got that great window. People would come in thinking that we were a retail store because there are many around, but that was my playground, and that was really great. I really enjoyed it. Among the things that I did at AIGA was handling the competitions, the design competitions, and this is just one of the sessions. We would lay out a lot of work and invite this great professionals to come and review it and really select pieces that would show to the world that snapshot in time for that year and really what was happening in design that year as accurately as we could. Not perfect. Competitions are not a perfect way of recognizing great work, but it's one that we have. Among other things were exhibitions. I did probably 6 to 8 exhibitions a year. We had 2 spaces. This was the main gallery. And the exhibitions themselves had to be a piece of design. So we were showing the winners of the competitions, but the installation itself had to have a concept, it had a client, and it had every aspect that a design project would have. This one, for instance, was very interesting because the tables are done with supplies that we then donated to an organization called Public Color, where they work with kids of at-risk teens, really. So instead of just doing an exhibition and then saying, oh, who can we give the materials to, we first looked for nonprofits that had kind of missions that we believed in. This was done with the design team. And we picked one and we said, okay, what do you need? And they gave us a list. And with that list, we designed the exhibition. So it was used up to the last bit. So those are paper towels, those are rolls of the paper that you protect the floors with, ladders. You know, all of that was not even reused, it was really bought for them. Another show, 50 books, 50 covers, where you have piles of paper, since that's what books come from, but at the same time having a participatory element. Another 50 books, 50 covers show where people would sit on the bleachers and spend time with the books. Another view, and this is actually exactly the same view, but a different show. So we transformed the space completely from show to show. This is another of the winners of the competition. This is yet another one, putting together media, packaging. This is a show where actually Rafael and Rebeca were featured, design journeys, so the presence outside and then how that carried over inside. That was the opening, actually. We did publications of the winners. We did the online archives. That was also something that I participated in. We started a kind of curated blog called Design Envy. Sue headed that too, and is here. And then I went more fully into the management when I met up one day with Rafael. I was leaving AIGA, and he said, oh, you know, how about doing something together? And I have huge respect for Rafael's work, and we were good friends, so we said, okay, let's try it. So those are lists that we had in the studio walls about things that needed to be done. In the meantime, while I was at AIGA, I also honed in on my management skills. During that time, SVA started the Hablas Diseño program, which is design programs in Spanish, or bilingual. That was 2007, but it still continues. My project management class, project management for creatives, still continues every term. And again, it's about, we have a certain mindset as creatives. How can we work within the tools that are easier for us to manage, but being in good relation with the way life has to happen? At the UDEM in 2011, after knowing them for a long time, they decided to push their design programs, so I am teaching there. And I actually will go by and show you this that is actually from my students. Okay, look, you know, I can use Illustrator, Photoshop, and Design. I'm like, I don't want that. I want to get your hand and your head working. Let me turn this down. You know, let's they had all the research done before I got there, just let's get to paper. And they did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sketches, from which we then picked some. They actually had a real client, which was unusual. So I'll show you, these are just some of the few that we edited down to, and from here we got edited down some more, and then that is what we ended up with. And it was a very interesting process for them to, that self-editing. It was just, starting with a lot of ideas and then getting to edit that down. So there are a few things that I tell my students all the time. One is, forget about the pencil at first. Do research, and more research, because that's really where all your ideas will come from. To arrive at a great idea, you have to start with a lot of ideas. Don't self-edit yourself. Sketch by hand a lot, and before you do anything else. But then you really have to be very proficient at your tools in order to make sure that your concept translates. And then effectiveness trumps beauty, but it doesn't justify its absence. And in that sense, it's like, we don't want design that just looks pretty, that is effective, but that doesn't justify that it should look awful. You have to find that balance between the two. And then always maintain an open mind, learn to be flexible, and partner with experts. We become more and more multidisciplinary, and we can't know everything. So make sure that you partner with people that you need. Don't be, be humble, accept that you don't know everything, and partner with who does. And this is just my parting thought. That is something that I came to the conclusion after all of that left brain, right brain. I'm like, it doesn't matter which one you use. The important thing is that it's adaptable. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rafael, and I have a company called Alfalfa Studio, and I actually come from this town, which is in the desert, the north of Mexico. As you can see, it's very dry, and I just love design, so I took a photo, and that is in the door in my studio if you ever visit. It's in Soho. So I've been doing design for about 20 years. I started in Los Angeles. I actually was lucky to work with Rebeca at some point and learn. In 2004, I left my position as a creative director of a multimedia company, global company called Radical Media, because I wanted to focus on smaller projects. I wanted to work with clients that actually appreciate the power of good design. And the first thing that I'm going to show you is the studio reel, which shows a lot of projects, collage projects. So again, Alfalfa Studio was founded in 2004, so 11 years ago. And then from the very beginning, I was asking myself, what is it that I really like to do? I tried to establish a design philosophy, and wait, that went the wrong way. So we work into culture, fashion, sports, entertainment, education, editorial, and pro bono. Those are the areas that the studio creates most of the work. So as I was saying, at the very beginning, I like design that is beautiful, that is surprising, but it has an idea that is clear and simple. So for every piece of work that we do, we kind of put it against this philosophy. Is it clear? Is it simple? Does it have the element of surprise? Is it beautiful? But in doing so, I think what is important for us, for me, for the studio, is to tell stories that come from the heart, that stay in the heart. So it doesn't matter if we're working for directing an animation to tell the story of, the ugliest woman in the world, or creating a logo to inspire the fans and players of an NBA team. Everything has a story. So our design is accessible, not esoteric, full of feeling, not sterile, and passionate about life, not detached. So I will show you four projects that hopefully keep this philosophy. So the first one is for Kate Spade, and as you know, the fashion brand Kate Spade, New York. A couple years ago, they had this campaign called the Year of Color, where they find a designer or an artist to promote. Every month they will promote one color of their products of the brand. So they called me and they said, you have the color brown, chocolate for October. So I have to direct a 60-second, 1-minute animation. So I never done really stop motion, so I challenged myself to do stop motion. I really like that tactile quality of that. And then, so the idea is to, what is it like to, I imagine a salon wall where all the paintings, all the will talk to each other. After you turn off the lights, if they come to life, what do they do? At the same time, I discovered the music of this really beautiful Mexican singer called Carla Morrison. And she happens to be a sister of mine. So I proposed that music, and it was the first time that Kate Spade actually uses Spanish music, and you'll see why. So this is the animation.
Caminando por ahí, fui recordando todo lo que perdí, olvidando el pasado, descifré el futuro, mirando mi presente, conseguí valorar aquellos frutos.
We actually created all the artwork and all the paintings. It was a huge... Should I get it? No, now. Okay. So the next project, after 9/11, a lot of the film industry just left New York. They were filming, movies in Canada, in London, that were supposed to be set in New York. So the mayor office of media and entertainment launched this program, the Made in New York, for which they asked me to do the logo, the branding. And this is what we did, something very simple, very timeless, that is really inspired by things that you see in New York every day. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, this one. This is for the New York City Football Club. One day I got a call from Droga 5, an agency, and they said, would you like to design the logo for the soccer team for the city of New York? And it was some kind of competition. They started with 12 designers, narrowed down to 5. They interviewed 3, and the New York City Football Club is owned by Manchester City and the Yankees. So they selected me, and this little video shows you a little bit of the process. That's how it looks.
I think we have to ask the 5 boroughs which make up our badge what they want on the badge. Just go to each of the 5 and make them come up with their element, because the 5 boroughs must be represented in that way.
Hola, I'm Rafael Esquer, and we're designing the New York City Football Club badge. A lot of people just want to jump in and start sketching, right. But if you're empty in the head, then the design is not that interesting. I study a lot about New York City, so this is a great reference that celebrates the 400 years of New York. Early documents that really inspired typographically. Omnibus and rail tokens from the 1800s. There are lots of elements from architecture, like Central Park Fountain, or of course there's a Liberty. I wanted to bring the past with the modern times, so what we use is the shape of the crest, which is the official shape of New York. So I thought, okay, we can start exploring the idea of a monogram with 5 letters. To tell you a little bit about the background, we started with about over 200 different sketches. So what you're gonna see are 5 that I think are really good.
The first one to me is the shield. I love the shield. I think it's great.
Once you see it, it always stays with you. And the positive, negative is just very playful. They're all like my children, so I cannot say that. The team actually starts playing in a couple of weeks, and I hope they're gonna win. So the last project is another stop motion animation, and this was for an artist who found out about the story of Julia Pastrana. Julia Pastrana was a Mexican woman from the 1800s who happened to have 2 different conditions. One, that she had hair all over the face, and the other one, she had a jaw that was really out of proportion. So she was known as the ugliest woman in the world. She was taken to Europe and exhibited in freak shows, and she died when she was 26 of childbirth. Her husband wanted her to have a children. He was actually making money out of her. It's a really sad story. So he can exhibit the baby and the mother. So this artist found out, and then she started this process of bringing the body of Julia Pastrana to Mexico. And at some point, the body was in the basement of a university in Norway. And so she involved, she got the authorities of Mexico, she got a lot of the art community behind, and one of them was also musicians. So when finally, after 150 years, the body of Julia was able to come back to Mexico. So to celebrate the return of Julia to Mexico, they asked me to design and to direct an animation. So in this one, I wrote the story, did the storyboard, and we did the whole thing. And the music was composed by Magne Furuholmen, who is from AHA, the band from the 80s, who is a very, very gifted musician. And now there's going to be an opera about Julia Pastrana, and it's a very exciting project to be part of, and one that I'm very proud of. So this is the video.
Come back, all is forgiven. Come back, all is not lost. Come back, I know what you want now. Come back to me. Come down, off of your pedestal. Come down, off your high horse. Come get some dirt under your fingernails. Come sing for me.
I forgot to mention she was a very gifted singer. She spoke several languages. And she's finally in Mexico having a proper place to be. And that's all that I have.
They're hot. And we need to talk. Okay, so I guess let's begin. It's been really wonderful to see works because already, of course, we know each other for a while, and is one of the things that to me was interesting about being here and with all of us that we have left our countries, we have gone through the process of getting some kind of permit, which all of them involve a lot of legality and a lot of working through obstacles. And then at the same time, beyond that, it is the desire of opening your own firm. Yep, having that independence. And so I'd like to maybe ask each one of you, and I can start maybe Rafa and then Armin and Gabriela. What is it that you see in terms of that trajectory of you knowing that you were just crossing thresholds that in many ways it could have been so much more comfortable, in some ways just not plowing through? So maybe if you can talk about that impetus that makes you have your own firm.
Good question, Rebeca. For me, I think it's always been, I like to break stereotypes. You know, as we immediately put labels on people as, regard to color, race, culture, whatever. So I like the idea of like surprising people. It's not what I expected of you. Second, I like to be challenged. I left, the moment I'm very comfortable, I get very uncomfortable. Living, this great salary, great place to be, it was just started to be repetitive. Having my own studio is a constant reinvention. And I always seek those projects, or they seem to always come to me that I haven't done before. Like to tell the story of Julia Pastrana. I just got this piece of music and do something. Or, doing the opposite, something for a soccer club, big, huge mainstream. How do you remain faithful to your passion and do something that is real, that you feel that is the right thing, authentic? And it's a constant search. So I'm talking too much? So I love to be challenged, and I love to reinvent myself. I think that keeps me young and, ready to fight every morning.
And handsome. Le dicen el guapo.
For me, I think it was the realization that what I started doing, which was running a blog and organizing conferences and getting known for writing about graphic design, was something that there was no way in hell could happen in Mexico, because of the way graphic design is perceived in Mexico, because of the youth of the profession. There's no, it's mostly owned by advertising agencies, or it was more at the time. So for me, it was always like I'm being given this chance to do something, and I can't imagine doing this in Mexico, so that kind of like pushes me forward. And I just have like a little side note that one of the reasons why I started, and one of the goals was to get known a little bit, was the process that you talked about, the immigration process, was that in order to get a green card, you have two options. You had to either be employed for a long time and have that employer sponsor you, or you can get a green card for what's called exceptional abilities, which is what most actors and athletes get. Green card, that's the process that they go through. And one of the things that you have to do is like provide, if you want to get a green card this way, is that you have to provide that you've been quoted in magazines, that you're an outstanding member of your professional community. And I had none of that. And like I think I had been in one design annual, but that wasn't enough. So I thought, by golly, if I'm not going to get a green card by an employee sponsoring me, at least I'm going to be goddamn famous. Not famous that people recognize me in the grocery store, but in the industry, people do recognize my name and the work that we do. So that really was one of the weird ways that kind of like pushed me to do what we do today.
I have to interrupt. Is that why it's called UnderConsideration?
No, it's called UnderConsideration because our first blog was called Speak Up, and speakup.com was taken. So we're like, what are we going to call it? UnderConsideration. That's not taken because it's just really long.
But it's very funny, your story and the name.
Yeah. And in immigration, you can't really speak up, so very, very ad hoc. So maybe I'm the odd one out here since it's very new for me to be on my own. But I think the way it's threaded is, even when I was at AAGA, what was great for me was to be able to work one-on-one with all of these different teams and not have to be tied to one. Then with Alfalfa, I had the experience of the opposite, which I enjoyed tremendously. And finally, I decided that I liked variety, not just of projects, but of people. So that's why I'm on my own again. But really, it's teaching that is my passion.
I remember just very quickly a note about my trying to get my green card was much earlier. And in 1984, when I graduated, we were with a lawyer, Mr. Mendelson, and we were 5 Mexicans trying to get our green card. We applied of that special abilities and da-da-da. He said also that if I would be specialized in like Porsche rims, I would get a green card fast, but not a designer because it was just too generic. And so anyway, we applied and it got rejected because graphic design in 1984 was not a profession. And so here we are writing to the American Center for Design, the AIGA, everybody and their mother, any organization that would actually speak for the fact that it is a profession. So I always joke that it took 5 Mexicans to make graphic design a profession in the United States. So I think we did. But anyway, and now I lost my question. The next thing, I wanted to follow up in what you were saying. Anyway, I'll just have to go somewhere else because I really just blanked out. I know that you both, this is very interesting that we have 2 marathon runners here. And so the question is the stamina that you have to bring yourself into getting into doing the work. How is it, does that work towards your creating your own projects, and how do you use that? Is there a similarity in the mentality, and does it help you to then focus on your work?
Absolutely. I think what we do requires a great amount of discipline. I work with I was very lucky to work with Eiko Ishioka, one of the most amazing designers that I ever met. And she always believed in, discipline over talent. I've seen a lot of people that are very talented, but they don't carry through, either for many reasons. But people that are very disciplined, you become a master. And I think, I guess, bringing back the marathon, for me, it was, I had really high cholesterol, so they said, please run. So I started running, but I wanted to have a goal. So it was, okay, I'm gonna run the New York City Marathon. And, it was the day by day by day. And I really believe more going like the turtle than the liebre hair. Yeah, because hair. You really get to know the way, you know, and I think with being disciplined, you learn so much, and running a marathon, it really requires a lot of discipline. You have to get up every day, you know, put the hours, and same with graphic design, you know, like great graphic design or great design. It is a lot into it. It's not, you know, just get up and do a sketch and this is the design. For the New York City Football Club, it was over 200 different directions, sketches that were explored, and it's building that muscle, you know, that then it just carries you through.
Yes, I think I've actually thought about this a lot. Am I live? No. Hello. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I've actually thought about this a lot, and I think the parallel is that the marathon is like your dream project, the big client with a lot of deliverables, like designing an airline or a museum or whatever it is. And then when you're training for a marathon, what you do is that you have easy runs, which are just going out for 4 or 5 miles. Then you have what are called tempo runs that you go faster. Then you have to do hills, which is going up and down hill like a fucking moron. But I love those because those are really challenging. They're hard, they're short. And it's kind of like when you have those difficult clients that just push you to the limit of your patience, of your abilities, and having those experiences. And like the easy runs are those projects that just everything goes swimmingly and everything is on time, on budget. And it's a combination of really hard projects, really hard clients, really horrible employees, whatever it is, that together allow you that when that moment comes, you're able to bring everything together and deliver on your client, or actually, run for 4 damn hours. So yeah, it's a lot of those combined experiences forming into one thing. That's a goal.
So you have to start running a marathon.
And I think that the reason I also mention that is because no matter what, we all need a certain kind of ritual of discipline that gets our mind into entering our projects. Like, for example, I know that for me, I don't run a marathon, but I basically have to empty the space completely. I clean every single surface. I redo, like wash the dishes many times. I rearrange everything so that there's nothing polluting in my mind. So there is a discipline of creating my space to be it's like an empty canvas. It's amazing how much I take away to be able to then bring in. And maybe, I don't know if you have a ritual, Gabriela, there's something that I'd love can share your ritual.
But I was just thinking, for those of us for whom discipline does not come so naturally, then you get a project manager, right? Which is my other life, right? So it's like, if you can't whip yourself into shape, I'll help you. It's like, do what I say, not what I do, because it's hard for me to apply it to my own life. But yes, definitely there are those things of like, okay, where do I start? And like you, it's like, okay, let's clean, let's file away, let's put away, but mainly in your head, right? Let's wrap up this nicely, this project, put it to rest so that I can commit fully and focus fully on the task at hand. And that is hard.
Exactly, the torture comes. I remember my question. My question was, of course, it has to do with the exhibition that curator of the Cooper Hewitt, Ellen Lupton, and Andrew Blauvelt did on graphic design now in production. It was several years ago. I see that your practice, Armin, is so much about designer as producer, which is a way to find your voice, a way to kind of really into, it's neither you work for an agency or something that you have to, kind of just follow the projects, but you open the possibility of being an author and to collaborate. So if you want to talk a little bit about how did that start? Because all of us have that.
City in 2009. I mean, we started with the blogs, and the blogs were fine. They were not the main financial drivers of what we were doing at the time. So when we started in 2007, we were doing a lot of client work. It paid great, but then 2009 happened, and that just went to hell. All of our clients disappeared. And they didn't disappear, it just coincided that we finished a lot of them, and we're like, how are we gonna make money? And one of the things that we've never been good at is getting business. Like, other than someone sending us an email saying, like, here is money, and do what you do, and we'll give you a check at the end of this thing. We've never gone out and gotten clients. And so when we were done with our clients, we're like, what do we do now? Like, we literally looked at each other like, what happens next? So that's when we did the portfolio book, because we're like, it's an idea that we had enough savings to produce it, and we needed the money. We needed to create something that would generate income. And after that worked out, we're like, oh, this works out great. We're our own clients, we set our own timelines, our own schedules. We design the way that we want to design. So after that, it was like, let's keep doing this and figure out ways that we can do what we want to do and take advantage that we have this huge audience through our blogs that is who we are. I mean, we're graphic designers, so we know what we want. We know which gives us an advantage of what designers might want. So it's been working out really well. And the most important thing is that it gives us the freedom to just do what we want, when we want. We do have to react to how our audience reacts. Some things work, some things don't work out. But yeah, it's just that flexibility. It just came out by necessity.
Yeah. And Rafa, I know that, for example, you have a lot of, when you were young, when you were little, actually, you drew a lot, and you made a lot of friends by drawing as you were traveling a lot, because your family moved around a lot. So you would actually make friends through drawing. And it seems to me that seeing your work, that you're now, through those skills that you have as an illustrator, and with all your collaging, you're generating projects yourself. So that seems to be a way of, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, you, again, being an author and a producer of your own work.
Sure. My father worked for the Department of Education in Mexico. His job was to actually literally knock in doors in rural communities in the north of Mexico and convince the parents that they should send their children to school. So he will build a little classroom, hire a teacher, and then we'll move somewhere else. So I was always moving, so I was always sort of like the new kid in town. So, and I was very shy. So drawing, it was just a way to make friends and to just be a little bit more in control of, your well-being, your adapting to new places. So at the studio, I think it's an interesting observation because it is what is happening. Many times we don't have, it's very unexpected, uneven, the flow of projects. Sometimes we're so busy, sometimes we don't have a lot to do, but we always have our projects, the in-house projects. Like the New York map that you saw was a self-generated project where we decided to draw every single building in New York City and just put it in a map. And now we're doing London, and we're also doing, our own animations, creating our own characters. And 3 years ago, we decided to start a blog, and we write every single day. And we started from, no visitors to now up to 500 a day, which is very nice for a design studio. And it also keeps us fresh, always looking and trying to have a point of view on whatever design or art or anything that we find interesting. The other thing that going back to the whole, discipline and marathon, I think having some kind of balance, it just makes your work much interesting, much richer. As I go home, I don't have email, my iPhone doesn't have email, so I only do email when I'm at the office. at home. I just got a TV recently, but I didn't have, it's nice to have the opposite side. Just go home, books, cats, and, like more real, because I feel that you have to have that balance. So whatever it is, a sport, I started practicing yoga 3 years ago, and that space, that hour and a half that I do, whatever, 4 times a week, is so important because it is time for yourself. As I go into the studio, what we do is most of the times doing things for other people. But if you don't do things for yourself, then you won't have much to give. Sorry, got a little bit too philosophical.
Somebody has to write a little song for you that is books and cats and boots and cats and boots. I'm going to think about that one. Now, for us, for example, in education, there is, when the exhibition of graphic design now in production went to the Hammer, I collaborated with the Hammer and brought my class, and it started a project in which all of my students would, I would break down some of the text, so it was a deconstruction of the texts, and then there was a kind of like generating something out of nothing, starting with words. Anyway, in the end, it was that everybody had to create a signature, a 20-page signature of their, the construction and reconstruction of the project, and then we would bind it all together in a 450-page book. And it started with that project, and it's one of the most desired, successful projects that I have had. And it's because I allow the students, and not allow, but even encourage them to produce and to generate their own content from scratch. They write it, they take their photographs, they do the illustrations, but also it ends up being a collective work where everybody participates and is responsible for the entire project. And I think that was amazing. And I don't know whether, in your teaching, you think about ways in which you are able to bring that kind of independent mind of the designer, because it's not anymore being obedience to the field. It's now really, we are at a time that is fantastic in design.
We're
that
authors,
independent authors,
not just
exactly.
visual authors.
Yeah.
Well, I think that for such a long time we said, or we hid behind pictures speak louder than words. My work needs to speak for itself. And I don't support that. I think as a designer, you need to learn to articulate what your point is. You are not doing fine arts here, although, it would be great for artists to be able to articulate too, but for the most part. But really, as designers, we are communicators. How can we be good communicators if we can't speak about our work ourselves? It's just, it's contradictory. So I am very into rehearse, just craft your speech so that you can really get your point across. As clearly as you do it with images, it should also be in words.
Could you please turn this question over to the audience?
Sure, definitely. Yeah.
We've got a mic, because we're recording, it would be great, even though we're fairly small at this point, if you could speak into the mic.
Is it working? Is it on?
Hello. Okay. So I guess I'm a Pratt student. I'm a grad student at Pratt right now, and I'm working on my thesis. And one of my questions, and hopefully this makes sense, I'm on the spot right now, but I'm very interested in cross-cultural design, and how, especially with brands and packaging, that being my area, it has affected our Latino American culture. And I seen, like in Rafael's, in the Mexican film that you did, in the video, I see that happening, and I see a lot of brands, especially commercial brands here in the States, taking that cross-cultural effect. And I wanted to know how you guys feel about that, and how you pretty much, what's your process and how you go by it, if that makes sense.
Easy question. just to answer kind of like the second part, in terms, one thing that I've always found, and people ask me, like, is there any Mexican-ness in your design? Like, no. I think I'm the whitest Mexican out there, other than Louis C.K., who's also Mexican. But I think, and I kind of like say that half jokingly, but I think there's a certain, it's hard when you bring in, I think there's more Mexicanity in your work than there's in mine. Mine is very, very much kind of like generic, and I think that's been a decision, not so that, in a way we don't get pigeonholed into, designing for, which there's nothing wrong with that, I just don't know how to do it. Because I think there's a specific visual flavor and aesthetic that you do need to be able to deliver that we just haven't been able to deliver. But I think there is something to it that comes that is needed visually and verbally, that has to be there. And maybe you can speak to that. Does that come across in your work where someone said, like, no, this is not Mexican enough, I want it more Mexican? Or
Sure. Well,
as a Mexican, I can say
my work is more Mexican than yours. No, it's really interesting because I have a little story. When I was working on the Houston Rockets logo, I was working with Eiko Ishioka, the Japanese designer. So she will go and present the work, and everybody will be like, she's Japanese, very Japanese, and it's like, oh my God, very Japanese, the design, and everybody's like nodding. And then next time I'm presenting and they go, wow, it's very Mexican. So I think, the first language that I speak is design, and I think it's universal. It's all about the choices that we make when it comes to color, form, and it just has to be appropriate for what it is. I just happen to be very lucky to have really interesting projects like the Julia Pastrana story. She came back to Mexico. Mexico was welcoming her. I didn't put a Mexican song. It was a Norwegian, which is kind of like the opposite culture, that he wrote this song for her to return to Mexico. And I felt that it was just appropriate to use paper and to make it very crafty, to tell her story, because I wanted people to feel it.
I think that there is a project I just did, and honestly I forgot to put it in, but it's there is a coffee company called Compañía de Café. We named them Compañía de Café, and it is they want to see themselves as like the new kind of chic coffee, like the Starbucks of the Latin American market. If you would have done like 20 years ago, whenever. But so the idea was, how is it that I can speak of the Mexican culture without falling into the stereotypes that everybody's expecting? So what or a designer I think that I recommend to do is just to take all of the stereotypes and put them in front of you and know where they come from, and to really deconstruct them and try to really find, either you just get rid of them and enter the second tier and the third tier and the fourth tier. And that's maybe how I end up with, our, there was a logo, like the icon itself is La Coatlicue, which is one of our gods of the death, basically, and she's pouring latte with her claws, like eyes going berserk. It's like, I'm not trying to please you with this. I'm simply showing you that if you really want to get into the Mexicanity, the Mexican culture, you deal with death. I mean, I remember there was one time and it was Ellen Lupton who asked me, like, what is the Mexicanity in your work? And I felt that was a very odd question, but I knew what she meant. And all I could tell her is that I think the way that I understand time, we have a saying in Mexico that if you look too fast to your left, you see your own death sitting on your shoulder. And it is because of that coexistence that we have of time. And so I could only think that perhaps it's a coexistence of time, but that's very philosophical. How is it that this becomes an element? And it's just go deeper into the culture. Don't stay in the surface of any of the cultures. That would be my take on that.
Yeah.
question?
I think that, you design for an audience, and you have to think of that audience and what the point of what you're designing is. So where you come from is not necessarily the issue, but creating something appropriate for the project that you have at hand. If it is appropriate for that to be more Mexican or more Indian or more Venezuelan or wherever, fine, if it's called for, but not because you are Latin American, you need to do design that looks Latin American. Plus, what does Latin American look like?
Salsa. Pico de
Tango.
gallo. Yeah.
Hi. Hello? Yeah, I have two questions. The first one is for Rafael. What was the music on your portfolio reel? And the second question is for everybody. Where do you look outside of design for inspiration and for stories and for just for anything that doesn't have to do with your day-to-day work?
The easy question is it's called Taboo. It's a Cuban composition by a woman, written, I believe, in the 50s. And that particular rendition is by Kronos. And Kronos, yes. It's nice, huh? Okay, and the second question, the inspiration. For me, mainly is poetry and literature and just observation of human behavior. I read a lot, but I mean, all the books that are in my house don't have pictures. It's mostly the pictures I make it up in my mind as I read them. So I think, having access to these great minds who've written these books is so amazing. I can really nourish you.
Saturday Night Live, Sons of Anarchy, Lost, Game of Thrones. I like TV a lot, and I think you get a lot of, they give you the visuals, they give you the references, they give you the catch lines. So I really enjoy referencing things that other people are seeing, and that's in terms of what I'm interested in. But in terms of what we do for graphic design is kind of like the same, where I'm looking at graphic design all the damn time, like all day long. That's what I'm doing. So when we design for designers, it's like, all right, all this stuff that you've been seeing, that I've been seeing, here it comes back at you, kind of like what Rebecca was saying, like, can you deconstruct it, and what can be funny, what can be sad about all the trends that we're seeing. So I really enjoy kind of like not spitting back, but just kind of like repurposing all the stuff that we're all seeing in a new and different way. So I find a lot of inspiration in just what we all do, which is really great, and there's a lot of stuff to look at.
For me, it's interesting. As you're saying that, it's like that pop culture and anything that has to do with the TV and all of that I'm alien to that, and it's so funny how we are in the, I would say, polar opposites in that. And I wish I would get much more kind of into the pop culture thing, and I'm not, because I feel sometimes very out of it with my students. I mean, they're referencing pop culture, and I feel like incredibly illiterate in that. I find a lot of inspiration in the two things. You said something about things being appropriate. And what I try to do is that whenever something kind of is of any interest, is deconstruct it, break it apart. And I think that it is that idea of arriving at the very elemental aspect of things, as if I then have to then reconstruct it again. My inspiration is a lot of philosophy and science. So those two things are the ones that make me deconstruct it as thought and deconstruct it as matter. And then it becomes very appropriate because I see it from the philosophical point of view, the material point of view, even if I'm speaking about servers. Yeah, and for me, it's like I really need to surround myself with people that see it from a more contemporaneous, like pop cultural part because I'm pretty blindsided on that. I can give you like, you know, Alain Badiou and all the philosophers, critical theory, you know, all the things that are like, why? And it's so serious and sometimes so heavy. Like I'm thinking of the atoms and so, but.
What you need is more cowbell.
I
And
need
if
more
you knew what I was
cowbell.
talking about.
I know exactly
yeah,
what you're
all
talking
right.
about. That one.
Not that one.
Who is the guy, the actor that I
Will
love?
Ferrell.
Will, of course, I love him. I,
I
do
think
need more cowbell.
The other thing that I actually learned this from Rebecca back when I live in Los Angeles, but it's intuition. Remember, you used to talk a lot about intuition and trusting, you know, like sometimes there are some things that don't have an explanation.
Yeah, but here it is. Here I am. I read Henry Bergson because he developed the whole theory of intuition in matter and memory. So it is something that, yeah, because I need to rationally arrive at that.
To wrap that. I actually look at anything but design. And I look at a lot of illustrations of nature, storytelling. I am really addicted to podcasts of like This American Life or Radio Lab that joins storytelling, personal experiences and science, TED Talks. I live on those. If you know the day that my commute is kind of weird, or I don't go into the office and I don't get to listen to some kind of podcast, I really miss it.
Thank you so much. We just have to wrap up. The co-check is going to be closing, so our time.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.